My grandfather taught me everything I need to know about personal combat.
Well, I was trained by Bruce Wayne, and every time they met, he kicked Ra's al Ghul's ass.
These videos are not for children. If you're a children, then piss off.
Hey there, it's me, your least favorite YouTuber, Infuso, and I'm once again checking out another Batman movie that I've yet to see. I've explained why in my Son of Batman video that I didn't watch this movie before, and if you haven't watched that video yet, I highly suggest checking it out before you watch this one. But the gist of it is blah blah blah, anime looking Batman, I don't like anime, blah blah blah, I hate Damian Wayne, which is also another video that I made, and I suggest checking that out as well. But never mind that shit. Here comes Batman vs. Robin. And let me say right off the bat, no pun intended, man, I've really missed out on not checking this out sooner. This movie's opening is some of the darkest content I've ever seen in a Batman movie. Animation or live action. Like, this gives Batman Returns a run for its money. The bizarre Dollmaker, a giant ogre of a man, who dresses up in what looks to be stretched out children's clothing, and then hides his face behind a doll mask. Just based on appearance alone, this is deeply, deeply unsettling. And probably the scariest Batman villain I have ever seen in my life. But then add to it that the character is abducting children and replacing their body parts with weapons, turning them into his doll army, and that's just a heaping truckload of nightmare fuel that I did not ask for. It's welcome, but I just want to go on record and say I did not sign up for this. I did not put in my order. This is not something that I would have ever asked for. The character is also voiced by Weird Al Yankovic, who's really putting his heart, soul, and vocal cords into making this already deeply unnerving man that much more unsettling. The character looks nothing like the incarnations I've seen of the character previously, but then again, there was about a good 8 years of Batman comics that I stayed away from, so if anybody wants to correct me in the comments, you're more than welcome to. But as far as I'm concerned, this looks nothing like any incarnation I've ever seen of the character, though that's not a complaint, so much as it is a comment. Because yeah, this is a horrifying upgrade. I don't expect to see this guy in a Batman movie, I expect to see him in the next Twisted Metal game. My one regret about this is that this character very clearly could carry a movie of his own. And seeing him dismantled with ease by having his heart ripped out of his chest was a shocking way to start this movie. Suffice it to say, this ain't your grandpa's Batman. Hell, this ain't even your daddy's Batman either. This is a very shocking and dark interpretation of the character and the world that surrounds him. And because of that fact, instantaneously, I was smitten with this movie. I think the film does a really good job of establishing its leads, showcasing both Batman and Robin's particular abilities. And it does speak to the growth of Damian Wayne, as we actively see him attempt to put his vengeance aside in the name of justice. But he doesn't do so because of his own beliefs, he does so out of respect for his father's teachings. We also early on see that Robin isn't just some bloodlusting barbarian. Like his father before him, he's also quite the detective, managing to pick up clues on a case that his father had either overlooked or just frankly hadn't looked at yet. The one negative I will say is that the movie has a lot of Bruce getting his ass handed to him in order to progress the plot. And I get why this happens in the story, but it does make Batman look like he's lacking in the hero department, or at the very least, getting a little bit ineffective due to age. The banter between Batman and Robin is once again really good and really believable. I buy into this dynamic, and I buy into them being a dynamic duo. Batman is constantly trying to scold his son, but the typical father warnings come off as idle, as Damian, despite his young age, is smart enough to see through his false threats. Their brief moments of bonding are really heartfelt in their simplicity, but effective regardless. You can tell that Bruce really cares for the kid, even if he is a stuck-up, stubborn little brat who knows way too much for his own good. And you can also tell that despite being raised as the heir to a throne, not a child at all, Damian is desperate to live a somewhat normal life outside his costume. He wants a family life. He wants to be seen in public. He's constantly fighting the basic instincts Ra's al Ghul embedded in him in an effort to respect his father's beliefs, even if he himself doesn't fully believe in them. He does this out of love. And you can tell when Bruce doubts his son in any context, it actually hurts Damian. But Damien also doesn't know how to express these emotions in a healthy manner. So instead, he just takes out his angst and anger on the nearest party. Bruce believes the kid doesn't have a heart due to his rough exterior. That couldn't be any further from the truth. Damien's jealousy of Nightwing should be a big indication of his love for his father. Because despite taking over his old mantle and replacing him as Robin, he didn't replace him in his father's heart. I really love the sparring scene between past and present Robins, but man, this one shot is a thing of brilliance. Dick Grayson is literally holding Damian Wayne up to his old Robin costume, the same way that Damian's father holds him up to the standards of that same Robin. And this whole time, Dick Grayson is reflected in the glass up against his former image. This is such a blink and you'll miss it moment, but it's absolutely beautiful and breathtaking. There's so much that's being expressed here in just a few frames. I love this shot. What's happening physically is reflecting what the characters are going through mentally. And in just a matter of moments, their dynamic is played out for the whole audience to see. And I gotta tell you, I'm starting to get really tired of these movies changing the preconceived notions I had about later Batman lore. I always hated Damian Wayne, and now, because of Son of Batman, and even more so because of this movie, I'm starting to learn to tolerate him, and maybe even understand him. And it's not because he's a good character. Like, I stand by my hatred of his overall presence, but the character itself is a breeding ground for interesting concepts and dynamics in the world around him. So yeah, I have to live with that. But now, the Court of Owls gimmick that I've always hated from its inception is starting to wear on me too. They're the movie's main antagonists. And I gotta say, I think this movie depicts them far better than any of the comics that I've read with them in it. Now granted, I'm willing to admit that because I'm not a fan of them, I haven't read a whole lot of comics with the Court in them. I kind of tried to deviate away from their appearances. But nonetheless, with everything that I've read or seen, this is my favorite version of that secret society. There's so much going on with them in this movie that I had to pause and rewind several times just so I could collect my thoughts on the matter. First and foremost, the most interesting has to be Talon. And that is not by coincidence, that is by design. There's so much to compare and contrast with this character and other characters within the continuity. Now, Talon has existed in the comics before, but it's more of a mantle than it is a man, at least to my knowledge. There have been several Talons over the years, and this one is just kind of a combination of most of them. So this version of the character was created in a way that you could juxtapose him with the other characters in the story. Like Damian, he was trained since birth how to acquire his unique set of skills. He was trained by family on the wrong side of the general moral compass. He was brought into a league at a very young age and told to follow orders no matter what the cost. He was groomed to be in a top spot and lead an army of underlings. But then on the other side, like Bruce Wayne, he was pursued by a league of crafty individuals and lured into it by the love of the leader. Not at all unlike how Ra's al Ghul tried to induct Batman into his League of Assassins, using his daughter Talia. I think Talon really stands out here. The story tells you just enough about this character. It allows him to keep his mystique, but it also allows viewers to get a sense of who he is, why he does what he does. Despite the mysterious aura surrounding this masked man with a distorted voice, he is still very much a human being underneath that mask. We see his humanity break through his conditioning in intervals, at times questioning and second-guessing the decisions the council's made for him. He even fights against their orders and stands up for what he believes in. Despite being a trained warrior, the man is not a mindless mercenary. He's no drone even if they'd like for him to be. I would not mind seeing more of this specific Talon. Quite frankly, I think this is an overall upgrade to the character that I'm familiar with. While Bruce and Damian are having their monthly father and son spats, disagreeing on almost every aspect of crime fighting, the Court, or more specifically Talon, takes an interest in the sidekick, seeing him as the ideal protege, trying to get him to reach out and embrace the parts of himself that he's been trying to bury. I like that these two bond to some degree, and I can only imagine that Talon sees a lot of himself in the boy that he's mentoring. And then the movie makes it explicitly clear in this scene, but I actually wrote that line prior to watching this part of the movie. Talon is much more patient with the kid than the rest of the Court would ever be, eventually turning on his higher-ups when he's asked to kill Damian, completely turning against his code in favor of compassion. But that compassion only goes so far, apparently, as he then decides that he and his army of test-tube Talons will take on the Batman themselves after they learn of his secret identity, thus using Damian as bait for the Bat. But when the two come to blows, Talon gets his woodsy owl-looking ass kicked by the father and son duo, who take his meddling in their relationship more than just a little bit personal. It's clear that because of the bond the two have created, and because of the similarities they share, and likewise lives that they lived, Talon projects onto the boy, and believes he too would be better off without his father. Ultimately, Talon is defeated and dies at his own hand. And the father and son share a much-needed hug. Though Damien is still determined to find his own way, and branches out to a monastery in the mountains to seek his own path. What an impactful ending to an already impactful movie. There's a few things I want to point out outside of my synopsis that I was very much in favor of. The Court of Owls drew Batman, and he envisions Batman as a mass murderer, leaving behind bodies of those he loves in his wake. But then when that Batman unmasks, it's not Bruce. It's an adult Damian Wayne, his own son. I really like that they included Damian's Batman suit from the comics. Again, it's a nice touch. And at first, I actually mistakenly believed that this was a reference to Bruce's Elseworld father, Thomas Wayne. One more thing I liked, getting Kevin Conroy, the definitive Batman, to play Bruce's father in a flashback. There's not a lot to talk about here, but that was a good call. I like what you're doing there. This movie also gives us this amazing moment, which I have no words for, I just want you to see.
Now I'm only gonna say this once, you sons of bitches. Get the hell out of my cave!
But despite me piling on praise here, I do have some criticisms, critiques, and inquiries. So, let's get into those. Damien was born being taught to hold up honor, yet he openly gives his father his word and mentions his honor, but immediately discredits himself by doing the opposite and not holding up to either his father or grandfather's traditions. But to be fair, maybe this was the movie actually making subtle hints at the fact that neither one of their ways are his own. So, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's actually brilliant. I still have more, hold on. Young Bruce also taking out his vengeance on an innocent owl because he believed his family was killed by the Court of Owls? I don't know, that felt a little bit off and unsettling. And not the same way that the Dollmaker felt unsettling, that just felt wrong for the character. Don't tell me you wouldn't kill a murderous, rampaging, psychotic lunatic who has killed more people than he's let live, but then you gleefully shoot down a harmless, doe-eyed creature. I get it, Bruce is young and he's taking down what he feels the creature represents. This is symbolic of him going after the secret society that took his parents from him. I get it. I don't like it, but I get it. Also, later, Alfred's just out here slaying dudes in cold blood. I mean, sure, they're undead or whatever, but I still think that counts as living, considering they're alive. And also, Alfred doesn't know that. Alfred just comes in like, I'm gonna shoot first and let God ask all the questions. The Samantha heel turn was pretty obvious from the start for me. A new woman in Bruce's life when the Court of Owls show up? Yeah, obviously she's part of that team. But what was significantly more surprising was Talon turning on the court. And more so over, his love interest, also Samantha. Kissing and then killing her in cold blood. So again, I don't know, I'm going to break even on this particular part. We're going to look past it. There's too much win here for it to be a loss. Overall, I give this movie my highest recommendation. I'm really glad I watched it myself because this is now one of my favorite Batman movies of all time. Again, this also goes down as yet another Batman movie that Batman isn't exactly the focal point, but he's had more of a role here than he's had in the previous Batman films in which I've made that same statement. So, it's fine. Batman doesn't need to be the main character in a Batman movie, but he does have to be one of the main characters in a Batman movie, at least as far as I'm concerned. This movie is great, and I cannot recommend checking it out enough. I don't even think that my words have done it justice. So go and check it out for yourself. And if you like this video and want to see more DCAU Batman content here on this channel, leave me a comment below saying,
It's just a story, Bruce.
With all that being said, I was your least favorite YouTuber, Infuso, and I thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next one.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.